Hello there. There's a part of me that feels like this might be regrettable, but with my current plans, I feel like making an extra clip won't hurt. It's 2:50 p.m. on Monday, the 30th of March, 2026, and ow, I just pinched myself with my trekking poles, which happens an unfortunate lot out here. I actually have a pretty nice little bruise on my forearm from doing it. Pretty, the worst pinch I've had, where, I have a specific way of holding my trekking poles, both with one hand by like resting the handles kind of like close to my armpit area, but not quite there. That would be a little gross. But yeah, like there's like some sort of math that's going on with the way that I'm able to hold my trekking poles, and occasionally the intersections of them will pinch me. But yeah, I was just thinking about stuff, and I thought, well, I'm road walking, so, there's no reason not to talk if I feel like I got stuff to say, and I do, so here we are. Yeah, I guess most immediately, the thought that is like, I guess this is the second time I've had it today, where I was kind of reminiscing on logistics. So I was thinking back to when I was on the bike ride back in August, and how, logistics were a big part of every day. I would basically have, probably at least 2, if not 3 plus logistical sessions as I made my way west, just to make sure that I was on course for where I was ultimately going, wherever that might be, and that I had the ability to tend to whatever my needfuls were in the meantime. If I was hungry, I could aim for a restaurant. If my cell phone needed charging, I could aim for a restaurant. If I didn't have any better points of interest, I could aim for a restaurant. Perhaps you see a theme arising here. And yeah, I feel like necessarily, because of the alterations of this type of trip away from the main way of doing it, which is just to say, incorporating road walks into the Appalachian Trail. I've had to come to terms with this, because little though I may like to admit, the culture of the Appalachian Trail is predominantly one of purity. And so, because no one else is out here choosing their own adventure. That's really not what the point of the Appalachian Trail is. I mean, a big part of it is the fact that it's sort of a predefined path. Someone who is blind has literally done it. I don't exactly know how. I know he had a seeing eye dog with him, but even still, I don't know how you manage that, but kudos to him. And so, reminiscing on the bike ride, I just remember when I would have these logistical sessions, hopefully after a good cup of coffee and some decent food, that, I basically would just let my emotional reactions dictate the route. I just remember, I would plot things out, maybe a couple of different options for getting to where I wanted to go, and, looking at distance, looking at road condition with Google Maps, satellite, maybe if I had a way, looking at elevation gain, which could be certainly at least surmised through topographical maps. Basically, I would just find whichever route didn't lead me to say, absolutely not. And I remember many times on the bike ride just being like, ugh, no, absolutely not. I'm not going up that hill, or I'm not going to stay on this old highway that's made of sand. I'm going to jump on the interstate, or, take a bypass around a mountain, or just go the easier route, and it's just interesting. I feel like I've beaten this horse to death, but it is interesting that the majority of the Appalachian Trail is just it is the hardest possible route. So most of the time when I'm, given the opportunity to revise the actual trip itself. We got a dog. Is he fenced in? We're about to have some fun. He seems fast and big. Not that scary though. Wagging his tail pretty hard. Yeah, it's just like, just that sense of being like, absolutely not. That's just a funny phrase that goes through my head. Because for the most part, like with the Appalachian Trail, when I have an alternative option, I take it, because the trail is just like, it's nothing but absolutely nots, you know. It is great. I do love it. I spent about 12 miles on it today. Got my money's worth. You are so loud. Hey. Jeez. So loud. Pretty scary looking dog. He looks pretty mad. But, jeez. That's so loud. All right, bye. Love you, bye. Phew, man, what a loud noise. Anyway, yeah. It's just funny that the absolutely not mind of thinking is not something that's more integrated into a trip like this, you know. You know, I've spoken a lot about how, like, nature doesn't really do much for me, and I think a lot of that is actually from being on the Appalachian Trail, just because there's so many parts of it were just, like, unremarkable, you know. And I don't fault the trail for that. I assume, you know, all things being equal, like, most of life is kind of unremarkable, you know. And when you're in the woods, it's just a lot more of that concentrated in the embodiment of trees and hills and leaves and roots and rocks and water. It has its moments, you know what I'm saying, as does life, but by and large I find it to be a reflection of everything that you could find outside of the trail. And so if you're chasing any kind of marginal gains, which I would say is more of a priority for me, then, you know, taking these little off the beaten path treks are just so rewarding. But as I say this, I also get the sense yet again that perhaps I am protesting too much. So yeah, I did have some other things written down. Yeah. But let's see. How's the day been? Well, I had internet this morning, so I was able to post some more episodes. Hope you all enjoyed. And I took it pretty easy. You know, I think I got too much food yesterday, but I wasn't in a frame of mind when I was having to make decisions about food and logistics to meaningfully sit down. I probably could have put the lines together and realized that today was going to incorporate a lot of road walking that would take me very, very close, if not all the way, to Woods Hole Hostel. And so that's kind of where I'm sitting now. I'm at a point where I could do a mid-high 20-mile day. I'm not entirely sure how many miles it would be, because it involves a lot of things that are more difficult to track, and it's really inconsequential to do so. But I could go to Woods Hole. So my general plan, regardless of what order it ends up being in, is that today I will camp somewhere, unless it starts to rain. And if it starts to rain, then I'll definitely push for Woods Hole, because that would be a nicer place to spend a rainy evening. So, you know, stopping at or before Woods Hole, which again is the other hostel that is widely renowned as one of the best on the trail. And it was the one that Bob Peoples at King Cora told me I should stop at next if I really wanted to enjoy a meaningful hostel experience that was on par with what he offered. He and the owner, Neville, actually give a talk at Trail Days, which I would love to attend if they do it this year as well. But it's all about what it's like to actually be a hostile owner and operator. And, you know, he was telling me, Bob, he was like, you know, this is a labor of love. Like, I have barely made any money from this at all. And so really, if you don't love it, then you really shouldn't do it, because it's not going to be some kind of a business venture that's going to make you a millionaire, which always reminds me, in 2015, I went to Portland, Oregon for a bike school. And when it was a 2-part kind of series, one of the practical exercises was, you know, building up a road bike and a mountain bike, going through all the components. We had like half of the day was like a textbook, and then the other half was a practicum where we'd actually do the thing that we had learned about, and that was a great course. But then the second part of the actual convention was basically learning how to run your own bike shop. And I feel like the first day of that course, the guy who was giving it said, like, you know how you make $1 million with a bike shop? And then everyone was like, how? And then he was like, start with $2 million. And I was like, oof, I bet that is right. Like, you know, I can only imagine. Every time I've ever integrated my passion into like my livelihood, or I guess anytime I've ever formalized a pure passion into something that was a commodified version of that, I've always found that it made me very much so dislike the thing that I used to love, just because it was like all of the fun and spontaneity was just gone, you know, and it had become this thing that was more of like, I don't know, a commodity. It had a known worth, and there, rather than just being pure unbridled joy, it was like, well, it's integrated into money now, and more is always better than less. So anyway, Bob and Neville of Woods Hole and King Kura, they give this talk, and I bet it's pretty interesting to listen to. But in any case, so I will get close to or at Woods Hole, and then tomorrow I plan on Neroing into Parisburg for a 0 the following day. I've got a little bit of business. Shout out to my dude Travis. And so I think it's been a while since I've had a 0. Is today Monday? Is that what I said? Yeah, so the last time I had a 0 was in Hot Springs, and I don't exactly remember how long ago that was. I think it was probably about 2 weeks or so. And yeah, it won't hurt anything. And I've never really spent a considerable amount of time in Parisburg, but I hope they have like a cafe, or at the very least a Dunkin' Donuts or a Starbucks or something, where I can get like a half decent cup of coffee and then really do some needfuls, you know. And yeah, so tomorrow, the Nero, I would like to spend some time at Woods Hole just helping with anything that they want or need done, you know, like basically the same offer that I gave to Bob when I first got there. I was like, is there anything that you want or need done that, you know, a second set of hands would be helpful in achieving? And he didn't have anything, but I know Woods Hole is a little different. It's a much bigger facility, and I think the only time I ever stayed at Woods Hole, which was 2019, I remember that while I was there, they call it work for stay. A work for stay item arose naturally just while I was there, because they had a decorative privy on the premises, and apparently some hiker, a little bit confused, used the decorative privy. I guess all the bathrooms were occupied, and so it was going to be some enterprising next person who wanted to do work for stay that would be cleaning that out. And so I'll hope that they got that squared away after the last 7 years of not being there. But in any case, I just thought that would make tomorrow a little extra special, you know, do a little bit of good work. I've told so many people that I will try to pay forward the kindness of their offers for support that I've pretty unanimously denied, and I just feel like doing something at Woods Hole is the right place to do that. So a Nero into Parisburg, which I think is another 10 or 11 miles north of Woods Hole itself, planned for tomorrow, and then I will stay at Angel's Rest, which is a hostel I stayed at in 2022, but it was kind of like a purely, I was just there for a very brief amount of time. All I remember doing was laundry, eating, and then sleeping. Did very, very little socializing. I think I arrived, I was kind of out of it, if I recall. Not entirely sure what the factors may have been at play there. It is interesting in 2022, anytime one of those old episodes comes up on my own shuffle, like I thankfully now have the luxury of having forgotten that I used to have a pretty bad bout of insomnia, and early on in the trail, even though I guess it was still 1,200 miles in at that point or so, in 2022 for me, I was still dealing with a lot of insomnia. And honestly, I don't feel fully caught up on sleep now. Just from the other night, like my face feels really chapped, and I feel like I need one more good night of sleep of like 11 hours, like 9 p.m. to 7:30. Like I feel like one more dose of that and all will be well. But this is a really nice road walk so far. Aside from that really loud dog, it's been pretty tranquil. Not a single car has gone by. It's pretty rural. There's a lot of pastures and cows and houses pretty sparsely put out in this area. Interesting things to look at, again, respectfully, maybe this will change when spring has really sprung, but at this point, being on the trail, there's just not a lot to look at, like there's no foliage. It's just very brown. Everything's brown. The leaves all over the ground are brown. The trees are brown. Everything's brown. A bunch of little baby cows out here, and I'm getting mad dogged by one of the mamas. But yeah, what else? It's already 3:08. Yeah, I don't even know. Honestly, a big factor for this evening depends on whether or not I get some wine or beer. If I can get wine or beer, then I will stay at a campsite before Woods Hole so that I can actually sleep the way that I want to sleep. And honestly, at this point, getting to Woods Hole would probably be pretty late in the evening, like maybe 8 or so. It could be earlier. I'm not entirely sure when I would actually arrive. But what's up, babies? Cows are funny. What's up, y'all? That way I wouldn't have to pay for anything. As I think about it, I actually like that plan a lot more. I hope that the grocery store that I'm going to has beer or wine, because it would be much more advantageous to the pocketbook to not stay at two places, like to not have 3 days worth of me being in a place. But now I'm just thinking out loud logistically. I can have my cake and eat it too. We'll figure out how all this stuff's going to work out. It'll be fine. So I had lunch. I guess I didn't get very far in the chronology. There wasn't really much to say, honestly. Well, I didn't have any water this morning. I had just enough for 1 cup of coffee. I had like a bunch of pepperonis like last night, and the salt content of those things just must be insane, because I woke up and my mouth was so dry and I just couldn't even help myself but to drink like, a third of the water I had remaining. And so this morning did all my normal stuff at camp, broke down, was on trail by like 9:15 or so, and then I had to go to the shelter. It was about a mile down the trail, and I had to go down to its water source because there was no water for the next like 9 miles or something like that. And had to get water from the shelter, and the water was like, I don't know, 0.3 downhill from the shelter. So I ended up doing like over a mile into the shelter, down to the water source, back to the shelter. What's up, y'all? And then back on the trail. So I've done some sideways miles today as well. And then I just pushed on to this other shelter that I guess was like, I don't even know, 9 miles into the day or something like that. And had lunch there. Got to hang out with a guy named Mr. Freeze. And he was cool. He was from the Haynesville, I think, like Franklin, North Carolina general area, which I'm familiar with. That's where the Nantahala Outdoor Center Trail Maintenance Club was located, over off 64 West, and it's close to where my parents live. Shout out to my parents. And yeah, we had a great talk. He was in the middle of a little Bible study, and he seemed pretty cozy. He didn't seem like he was going anywhere today. And he's been making his way. He's been doing, they call it a lash, which is a long ass section hike. And he started it several years ago. I couldn't really get the timeline or the consistency of direction very well from what he was telling me, just because it had happened over so much time. But yeah, like he'd done most of New England, he'd done most of the mid-Atlantic states, he had done most of Virginia, and I guess he was headed south. I can't really remember, but we had a good little talk. I was probably there 30 minutes longer than I would have otherwise been if the shelter had been empty, and I was just eating lunch by myself. So I enjoyed that. Big topic of our conversation was like that you really should do this kind of a thing as slow as you can tolerate. And he was telling me that there were like 9 people at the shelter last night, a bunch of young kids who have been doing like really, really big days. And, you know, I felt wistful. I was like, oh, I remember having that constant drive to do the biggest day I could possibly tolerate. But then I also remember the crushing disappointment of finishing this thing and then being like, dang, it's over already. Like, I remember in 2019, I was worried even in Georgia. I was like, oh man, this thing's already almost over. And then once it actually was, I was like, man, no more 30-mile days, huh? Just done unceremoniously. You finish and then you return. And yeah, so this group of kids, I've heard about them. I think they're the same group that had done the Station 19E to Boots Off Hostel day that I had heard about back when I stayed at King Cora. So if that is them, then I haven't fallen too far off of their pace, even though, you know, I've been doing my own thing. Because I just enjoy, especially meeting the people who do the things that I most identify with, which is like, you know, looking at this as an endurance challenge primarily, and a physical endurance challenge at that. Like, and I'm actually looking, the trails to my right, I can see it's a pretty gentle ridge line. It wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world. But again, with the ridges, water can be sparse. So not to say I have access to an abundance of it down here right now, but in any case, yeah, I just enjoy kind of, you know, interviewing those kinds of people just to get a sense of like where they're coming from and why they're doing things the way that they are doing them. But yeah, Mr. Freeze was great. I really enjoyed spending some time with him. He gave me a little Bible quote. I'll read it. Handwritten thing. I'll probably make this the album art. It says, "The hand of our God is upon all of them for good that seek him, but his power and his wrath is against all them that forsake him." It was a little heavy. Reminded me a lot of what Samuel L. Jackson said in Pulp Fiction, but it was from Ezekiel, the movie. Quote, this is Ezra. So this was Ezra 8:22b, I think. So yeah, it was fun. It was fun to spend some time there. It's always interesting. He I guess, I don't know how long he had been spending at that shelter, but I know he'd been there for at least a day. And, for me, respectfully, I can't imagine a worse place on earth to spend a zero than an Appalachian Trail shelter. Like, if you're doing the Appalachian Trail, that is. To me, that would indicate something had gone horribly wrong. Some probably cataclysmic weather event, or that's about it, actually. Some injury that was completely impossible to overcome. Like, they're great things, the shelters, but there's just nothing to do there, And for me, there's the added bonus of being terrified of the bugs and the creepy crawlies that exist on a microscopic level. So, again, respectfully, hike your own hike, sleep your own sleep, shelter your own shelter, all those kinds of things. And yeah, pushed on another 1.5 miles to get to the road, and that's where we are now. Very soon I'll be jumping onto 606, which will take me by the grocery store. Fingers crossed for a healthy, voluminous supply of beer and wine options. Of course, I'm partial to wine, but I won't turn my nose up at a beer or two. My worst possible thought is that they might only sell 6-packs, and then I have to think about, is it worth it to carry a 6-pack of beer? And if it isn't, how might I, respectfully get rid of, the extra weight? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Future logistics, future problems, all will be made clear soon enough. But yeah, I think the only other thing on my list, which is hardly worth mentioning, but I guess I thought it was good enough at the moment, was that I think everyone should come up with their own hand gesture for greeting people. I got one of my friends, shout out to Ben, sent me a picture from last summer, and it was a picture of us at a restaurant in Cabbagetown, Atlanta, Georgia. And it was a good picture. We would go to this restaurant pretty often. It was one of Ben's favorites, Carroll Street Cafe, where he actually met the mother of his child. So even more special. But yeah, I was doing the same kind of hand symbol that I still do. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know I've been doing it that long. It was just kind of cool, because I feel like if you choose a specific hand signal, then you can have a deeper way of greeting people that means more than just your average hand wave. Yeah, that's about as much as I can say about that, Forrest Gump style. So yeah, man, I suppose that's it for now. I'm looking forward to what the rest of the day has in store for me, and it's going to be a lot of road time, so I'm happy about that. So for now, I'll leave it there with a classic, love you, bye.